The silent desperation. The peaceful alien colony of Viorna had always been a symbol of hope in the galaxy. Located in the outer regions of the Zorathan cluster, Viorna was a quiet, thriving world where the inhabitants focused on knowledge, culture, and technological advancement. Their peaceful ways had earned them the admiration of other species. However, when the warships of the Corlith Dominion arrived at their doorstep, everything changed. The Corlith Dominion was known across the galaxy for their ruthless conquests and brutal tactics. They were a warrior species, fierce and unforgiving. The Corliths had swept across many star systems, conquering worlds without mercy. The Viorns, with their non-violent nature and reliance on diplomacy, were no match for the fierce Corlith warlords. On a cold, clear evening, the Viorns received their first warning. It wasn't a message of peace or hope. It was a cold, detached transmission. Your colony is under siege. The Corlith Dominion has declared war on you. We advise immediate surrender. Fear spread quickly throughout the colony. The leaders gathered in their central hall, a tall structure made from crystal and glass that reflected the purple skies of their homeworld. The members of the Viorna Council exchanged worried glances. They had no military forces to speak of, and their only defense was diplomacy. But they had never faced an enemy like the Corlith Dominion. How can we fight them? Councillor Rin asked, her voice trembling. We are a peaceful species. Our only weapon is negotiation, not war. Should we surrender? Asked Councillor Delphar, his voice barely above a whisper. Perhaps that is our only option. The council remained silent for a moment, each one considering the dire situation. But then Councillor Terra, the youngest of them all, spoke up. We cannot give up, Terra said. We must at least try to send a message for help. We cannot just let them destroy us without a fight. The council agreed, and the decision was made. Terra's plan was to send a distress signal far and wide across the galaxy. If there was any hope, it was that another race would come to their aid. She crafted the message carefully, choosing each word to express their desperation and hope. To any who can hear this message. The transmission began. The peaceful colony of Viorna is under attack by the Corlith Dominion. We have no means of defense and no military force. We plead for help. Please, someone, anyone, help us before it is too late. The message was sent across every available communication channel, reaching far into the depths of space. The Viorns waited, holding their breath, hoping for a miracle. Time passed, but there was no response. Hours turned into days, and still there was nothing. As the Corlith warships descended toward Viorna, the inhabitants saw their worst fears come to life. The enemy ships were vast and menacing, massive vessels with jagged edges and black armor that seemed to absorb the light of the stars around them. Their weapons were built for destruction, capable of turning entire cities into rubble with a single blast. The Viorns watched in silence as the Corlith fleet entered the atmosphere, their ships cutting through the skies like predators hunting their prey. It was too late to flee, and too late to prepare. The colony's only hope was the distant message they had sent. But with every passing moment, their chances of survival dwindled. In the city of Viorna, panic spread. Families huddled together in their homes, praying that somehow someone would come to their rescue. In the streets, the elderly and children were gathered into the central shelters, where they waited in silence. Even the strongest of the Viorns were unable to hide the fear in their eyes. Terra, the young counselor who had sent the distress signal, stood alone on a hill overlooking the city. She watched as the first of the Corlith warships began to fire upon the ground below. The explosions lit up the sky in bursts of red and orange, and the air was filled with the sound of shattering glass and crumbling buildings. The Viorns had no way to defend themselves. Their peaceful way of life was being destroyed before their eyes. Terra clenched her fists, her heart pounding in her chest. She refused to believe that this was the end. There has to be someone out there, she whispered to herself. Someone who will hear our cry and come to help us. As the days passed, The bombardment from the Corlith warships grew more intense. Cities were reduced to rubble, and the once thriving colony began to fall apart. The Viorns' desperate pleas went unanswered, and their hope began to fade. No ships arrived. No reinforcements came. But just as all seemed lost, Terra had a thought. She hurried back to the communications center, her mind racing. There was still one option left, an option that had never crossed her mind before. The human species. Humans were known across the galaxy as a dangerous and unpredictable race. Their reputation was built on their violent history, their merciless battles, and their ability to survive against all odds. The Galactic Council often warned other species not to trust them, as the humans had a reputation for being aggressive and self-serving. But Terra had heard rumors. Some said that the humans had saved colonies from destruction before. Some said they could be trusted in the most dire situations, though it was hard to separate truth from myth. Terra wasn't sure if she truly believed in the stories, but she had no other choice. She knew that they had to try. She sent a second message, this time to Earth. To the people of Earth, Terra's voice echoed in the transmission. The colony of Viorna is under attack by the Corlith Dominion. We have no defense and no help. We beg you, please, come to our aid. You are our last hope. Terra waited again, her heart pounding in her chest. This time, she knew the answer would come from someone different. Someone who was feared by many, but might be the very species they needed. The clock was ticking, and the fate of the Viorns rested in the hands of those considered dangerous by the galaxy. As she waited for the response, Terra watched the Corlith warships closing in on her world. The war was about to come to an end, but she couldn't give up hope just yet. Somewhere, out there, the humans might just hear their cry for help. And if they did, the galaxy would witness something no one could have ever predicted. Terra sat in the ruins of what used to be the Viorna Council Hall, staring at the emergency communication console. The screen flickered with static, the distress signal still broadcasting into the void. Outside, the sounds of destruction continued. The Corlith Dominion had begun their full-scale invasion. Buildings collapsed under the weight of their bombardment. Viorns screamed as they fled for safety, though there was nowhere left to go. She gritted her teeth. The Galactic Council had ignored them. The so-called civilized species had turned their backs. Not a single fleet had responded to their calls. It seemed that peace-loving species like the Viorns were left to die, while the powerful races watched in silence. A sharp tremor shook the ground beneath her. A massive Corlith dropship landed near the outskirts of the city. The invaders had stopped firing from the sky. Now, they were coming in person. Terra's breathing became ragged. She pressed the distress beacon's activation again and again, though she knew it was useless. There would be no answer. There never was. Then, for the first time in hours, the console beeped. Her eyes widened. A response. Terra's hands trembled as she activated the transmission. A deep, distorted voice echoed from the speaker. Transmission received. Identify the nature of the emergency. Terra's heart pounded. The voice was unlike any she had heard before. It wasn't robotic or indifferent, like the Galactic Council's automated replies. It was direct, firm, human. Viorna is under attack by the Corlith Dominion. She shouted into the console. We have no defenses, no ships. They are killing us. Please, you have to help us. There was a long silence. The static crackled in her ears, and for a moment, she feared she had imagined it all. Then, the voice returned. Coordinates received. Stand by. The transmission ended. Terra stared at the screen, her hands gripping the edge of the console. That was it. No promises. No assurances. Just stand by. Her mind raced. The humans. She had heard so many terrifying things about them. They were called unpredictable, violent, and dangerous. The Galactic Council had always warned against trusting them, saying they thrived on war and destruction. But those same peaceful civilizations had done nothing for Viorna. If the humans were their only hope, then so be it. Outside, The Corlith warriors marched into the streets. They were massive, towering over the Virons. Their armor gleamed under the fading light, dark and menacing. Each step they took sent a shiver through the ground. Tara watched from the shattered window of the council hall. The Virons did not fight back. They couldn't. They were a species of scholars and thinkers, not warriors. The Corlith knew this, and they took their time, rounding up civilians, tearing through the city like it belonged to them. The leader of the Corlith forces, a towering brute named Vrax, stepped forward. His jagged armor was decorated with battle scars, his claws sharpened to lethal points. He gazed over the trembling Virons with a smirk. "Your cries for help were pointless," Vrax sneered. "The galaxy has abandoned you. Surrender now, and perhaps we will spare a few of you." Tara clenched her fists. She had seen this before, conquerors who demanded surrender, only to slaughter their victims anyway. The Corlith had no mercy. Vrax stepped forward, eyes scanning the terrified crowd. His gaze locked onto Tara. "You," he said, pointing at her. "You're the one who sent the distress signal." Tara's blood turned to ice. She forced herself to stand tall, though her body was shaking. Vrax chuckled. "Do you think some pathetic plea for help will save you? Who do you expect to come? The cowardly Galactic Council? The weakling traitors? There is no one left to help you." Tara opened her mouth to speak, but before she could answer, the sky changed. The clouds above twisted and darkened. A deep rumble echoed across the city, and then light. Blazing streaks of fire cut through the sky, descending with terrifying speed. The air vibrated with an unnatural energy, a force unlike anything the Virons had ever felt. The Corlith warriors turned their heads upward, their confident expressions faltering. Vrax narrowed his eyes. "What is?" The first impact came without warning. A deafening boom shattered the air as something massive broke through the atmosphere. The ground quaked violently, sending shockwaves through the streets. The force of the blast knocked the Corlith off their feet, sending rubble flying in all directions. Tara gasped as she shielded her eyes. When she looked up again, her breath caught in her throat. The ships were unlike anything in the galaxy. Massive, armored, and built for war, the human fleet had arrived. Their ships were dark and menacing, but they carried a presence that sent a chill down Tara's spine. These were not traitors. These were not diplomats. These were warships, human warships. A deep, thunderous voice echoed from the sky, broadcasted across the city. "This is Commander Rourke of the Terran Defense Fleet. The Corlith Dominion is hereby given one chance. Withdraw immediately, or be eradicated." Silence. Vrax stared at the sky in disbelief. Then he laughed. "Humans? They dare interfere." He turned to his warriors. "Let them try." But before the Corlith could react, the sky erupted. Human fighters descended in perfect formation, moving with terrifying precision. They weaved through the air, unleashing a storm of firepower. The Corlith warships in orbit were caught off guard. Explosions lit up the night as the humans tore through their forces. On the ground, the Corlith warriors scrambled, their confidence crumbling. They had expected no resistance. They had expected an easy victory. They had not expected them. Tara watched as the human drop pods rained down, crashing into the streets with earth-shaking force. The doors of the pods burst open, revealing armored soldiers. They were unlike anything she had ever seen. Their weapons gleamed under the burning sky, their armor built for war. Their faces were obscured behind dark helmets, but their presence alone sent shivers down the spines of even the fiercest Corlith. One soldier stepped forward, his movements controlled, powerful. He raised his weapon, and his voice rang out, calm and steady. Target confirmed. Commencing engagement. Then, all hell broke loose. The humans moved with terrifying efficiency. Their weapons were brutal, cutting through the Corlith ranks with unmatched firepower. The warriors who had once laughed at the idea of resistance were now being torn apart, their formations collapsing under the relentless assault. Tara couldn't believe what she was seeing. The same species the galaxy feared, the ones called dangerous, unpredictable, were fighting to save them. Vrax roared in fury, slashing through the air with his massive claws. He charged toward the nearest human soldier. The human didn't hesitate. He sidestepped the attack with inhuman speed, raised his weapon, and fired. A single, precise shot. Vrax collapsed, his body hitting the ground with a heavy thud. The Corlith Dominion had underestimated them. The war for Viorna had begun, and for the first time, the Viorns had a chance, because the most feared species in the galaxy had come to fight. Tara stood frozen amidst the chaos, her heart pounding as the battle unfolded before her eyes. The Corlith, once so sure of their dominance, were now on the defensive. The human soldiers moved like shadows of death, efficient and relentless. Their weapons tore through the enemy ranks with terrifying precision. They did not hesitate. They did not falter. They fought like warriors who had seen too many wars and had no patience for drawn-out battles. Vrax's body lay motionless on the ground, his lifeless eyes still wide in disbelief. Their leader had fallen in mere seconds. The Corlith warriors hesitated, uncertainty flashing across their faces. For the first time, they looked afraid. Then, the silence broke. A furious battle cry erupted from the remaining Corlith forces. Though fear had begun to creep into their minds, they were still warriors. They would not surrender so easily. Tara watched as the Corlith regrouped, forming defensive lines. Their massive, armored forms moved with surprising speed, using the wreckage of buildings as cover. They drew their energy blades, their snarling faces contorted with rage. If the humans wanted a fight, they would get one. But the humans had already anticipated this. A loud explosion rocked the street as a human gunship soared overhead, releasing a volley of fire onto the Corlith positions. The ground trembled under the impact, sending enemy warriors sprawling. The humans advanced without hesitation, covering each other in synchronized formations. They moved like a machine. Every motion precise, every shot calculated. Tara had never seen anything like it. She had always heard stories about humans, how they were reckless, unpredictable, and dangerous. The Galactic Council had painted them as little more than warmongers, a species that thrived on destruction. But now, watching them fight, she realized something. They weren't fighting for conquest. They weren't fighting for power. They were fighting to protect. The realization sent a shiver down her spine. A deep voice crackled through the human comms, and she realized it belonged to the man who had spoken earlier, the one who had warned the Corlith to leave. Push forward. Secure the civilians. No one gets left behind. Tara turned and saw him. Commander Rourke. He stood at the front of the human lines, leading the charge himself. His armor was heavier than the others, reinforced with additional plating. His helmet bore no insignia, no rank markings, and yet, when he moved, the soldiers followed without question. A Corlith warrior lunged at him, energy blade swinging. Rourke sidestepped at the last moment, caught the alien's arm mid-swing, and drove a combat knife deep into its throat. The Corlith gurgled, its weapon slipping from its grasp before collapsing in a heap. Rourke didn't even spare it a glance. He had already moved on to the next enemy. Tara's breath caught. This was no ordinary soldier. She had heard the name Rourke before. The Galactic Council had spoken of him in hushed tones, a human war leader with too much blood on his hands. They had called him ruthless, a man who only knew war. But now, she saw the truth. Rourke fought with precision, not cruelty. He gave no unnecessary orders, wasted no bullets. He was efficient, controlled, a soldier who had seen far too much war, but still chose to fight. A sudden explosion sent debris flying, forcing Tara to duck. When she looked up, she saw something that made her blood turn to ice. Reinforcements. A second wave of Corlith forces had arrived, marching through the ruined streets. Unlike the first wave, these were not simple foot soldiers. These were enforcers, heavily armored, elite warriors bred for battle. They carried heavy plasma cannons, their glowing barrels humming with lethal energy. One of them, a towering figure nearly twice the size of a human, stepped forward. His armor was reinforced with dark plating, and his eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "I am Warlord Jekar," the brute announced, his voice deep and guttural. "I will crush every last one of you." The remaining Corlith forces roared in approval, their fear replaced by renewed confidence. The tide of battle shifted in an instant. The human soldiers didn't react with fear. They simply adjusted their weapons, prepared for the next wave. Rourke's voice came through the comms again. "Form up. Heavy units incoming." Tara gripped the edge of the crumbling wall beside her. The battle had just begun. The battlefield was shifting. Tara could feel it in the air, thick with smoke and tension. The Corlith enforcers advanced like a walking wall of destruction, their heavy plasma cannons humming ominously. The ordinary Corlith soldiers, who had been faltering moments ago, now roared with renewed confidence behind their elite warriors. Commander Rourke stood firm, his soldiers waiting for his command. Unlike the Corlith, the humans did not shout or show their anger. They simply adjusted their stances, checked their weapons, and prepared to fight. There was something chilling about their quiet determination, something that sent a shiver down Tara's spine. Then, the silence broke. Warlord Jekar raised his plasma cannon and fired. A massive, glowing bolt of energy screamed through the battlefield, obliterating a nearby building in an instant. The shockwave sent dust and debris into the air, momentarily blinding Tara. And then the humans moved. Rourke's voice crackled through their comms. "Engage." In an instant, the battlefield erupted into chaos. The human soldiers opened fire, their railguns cutting through the dust like streaks of light. The Corlith enforcers, heavily armored as they were, took the first wave of gunfire without flinching. Their armor glowed red-hot from the impacts, but it did not break. A second plasma bolt roared through the air, slamming into the human line. 2 soldiers were thrown back, their armor smoking. The rest immediately adjusted, breaking formation and moving into cover. Tara pressed herself against a crumbling wall, barely able to process the brutality of the battle. Then she saw Rourke move. He wasn't like the others. He didn't just stand back and give orders. He fought. With a single motion, he leaped over a barricade, sprinting straight toward the nearest Corlith enforcer. The alien swung its massive arm, but Rourke ducked at the last second, rolling underneath its attack. Before the enforcer could react, Rourke was already behind it, raising his rifle and firing point blank into the gaps in its armor. The creature let out a strangled roar before collapsing. Another enforcer turned toward Rourke, raising its plasma cannon. Tara's breath caught. He was exposed. Before she could cry out, one of the human snipers fired from a rooftop. A single shot, a single precise bullet. It pierced the enforcer's helmet, dropping the alien instantly. The Corlith had come prepared for a battle, but they had underestimated one thing: humans did not fight alone. Squad 2, flank right, Rourke commanded. Squad 3, suppress the heavies. The human soldiers moved like a well-oiled machine, shifting positions and covering each other. They weren't just individual fighters. They were a unit, working together in perfect synchronization. The Corlith weren't used to this. Their combat doctrine was based on brute force and overwhelming firepower. Against most species, it worked. Against humans, it was failing. Warlord Jekar growled in frustration. He raised his plasma cannon, targeting Rourke directly. Tara's heart stopped. But before Jekar could fire, Rourke threw something, a small metallic device that clattered to the ground at the warlord's feet. A second later, a high-pitched beep echoed. Jekar barely had time to react before the device exploded in a violent shockwave, sending him staggering backward. His armor was strong, but even he wasn't immune to direct explosives. Rourke didn't waste a second. He sprinted forward, pulling a combat knife from his belt. The warlord roared, swinging his massive arm, but Rourke ducked, rolling underneath the attack. He jumped onto the alien's back, plunging the blade into a weak point between the armor plates. Jekar bellowed in pain, trying to shake Work off. But the human held on, twisting the blade deeper. The warlord collapsed to one knee, his strength failing. The battlefield went silent. The remaining Corlith warriors hesitated. Their leader, their strongest, was falling. Tara saw the shift in their eyes. Fear. They were losing. And for the first time, they realized it. The battlefield was still for a moment. The Corlith warriors, known across the galaxy for their brute strength and ruthless nature, hesitated as their warlord struggled on his knees. Rourke stood above him, his combat knife still lodged deep in the alien's armor. The sight of their most powerful warrior faltering sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks. Tara could see it in their expressions. The fear, the disbelief. The Corlith had expected an easy victory, an effortless slaughter. But now, their confidence was crumbling. Rourke pulled his knife free and stepped back. "You thought we'd be easy to break," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You thought you could walk in, crush everything, and leave." Jekar let out a guttural growl, trying to rise to his feet, but his body betrayed him. He was injured, badly. The once mighty warlord was struggling just to breathe. "Let me make this clear," Rourke continued. "You came to this world expecting weaklings. Instead, you found us." He pointed at the human soldiers still standing, their weapons trained on the remaining Corlith. "You found fighters, survivors, and now you're losing." A murmur rippled through the Corlith warriors. Some tightened their grips on their weapons, torn between pride and the harsh reality before them. Then, the silence shattered. A high-pitched alarm blared from the sky. Tara instinctively looked up. A fleet of Corlith warships was descending, their thrusters roaring like a storm. Reinforcements. The remaining Corlith warriors straightened, their hesitation fading. Their fleet was here. They still had a chance. One of the human soldiers cursed. "They're bringing in heavy support." Rourke didn't flinch. He activated his comm. "Command, we need immediate air support. Enemy reinforcements incoming." Static. Then a voice. "Copy that. Commander, ETA. 2 minutes. 2 minutes." Tara's heart pounded. The Corlith warships were descending fast. The humans had fought bravely, but they couldn't hold out forever. Jekar grinned weakly, his voice dripping with malice. "You lose." Rourke didn't even glance at him. His eyes were locked on the approaching warships. Tara knew that look. It was the look of someone who had a plan. Rourke activated his comm again. "All squads, fall back to designated positions. Prepare for counterstrike." The human soldiers didn't hesitate. They moved with precision, retreating in a controlled formation. The Corlith warriors, emboldened by their reinforcements, roared and charged forward. Plasma fire erupted across the battlefield. Tara ducked behind cover, her heart hammering. The ground trembled as the warships loomed overhead. Then the sky burned. A streak of fire shot through the atmosphere, then another, and another. The Corlith warships didn't even have time to react. Explosions erupted across their hulls as missiles struck them with pinpoint accuracy. Within seconds, what had once been a mighty fleet was now a firestorm of debris crashing to the ground. Tara's breath caught in her throat. The human air support had arrived. And they weren't holding back. The battlefield turned into chaos as the remains of the Corlith warships crashed down, fire and smoke filling the air. The once mighty invaders were now the ones scrambling for cover. The human counterattack had begun, and it was relentless. Rourke didn't waste a second. "Push forward. Don't let them regroup." His voice cut through the noise like a blade. The human soldiers surged ahead, their weapons blazing. Plasma bolts and gunfire tore through the remaining Corlith warriors. What had once been an unstoppable invasion force was now a disorganized mess. Tara stayed close to Rourke, her heart pounding. The humans had turned the tide, but the battle wasn't over yet. A deep roar echoed through the battlefield. Jekar, the Korlith warlord, was still alive. Despite his injuries, he stood tall, his crimson eyes burning with fury. His massive frame was covered in blood and scorch marks, but his spirit remained unbroken. "You think this changes anything?" Jekar snarled, his voice filled with rage. "You think this is over?" Rourke didn't flinch. He stepped forward, gripping his combat knife tightly. "You're done, Jekar. Call off your forces. Surrender." Jekar let out a dark chuckle. "Surrender." He lifted his massive plasma blade. "I will tear you apart with my own hands, human." Tara's stomach clenched. Jekar was wounded, but he was still deadly. The Korlith warlord lunged forward with terrifying speed, swinging his blade in a wide arc. Rourke barely dodged in time, rolling to the side as the energy weapon carved a deep scar into the ground. The fight between them was brutal. Rourke dodged and countered, striking at Jekar's weak points. But the Korlith was built like a tank, shrugging off attacks that would have dropped any other warrior. The remaining human soldiers held back, knowing this was a fight between leaders. The outcome would decide the fate of the battle. Jekar swung again, forcing Rourke back. "You humans fight like insects," he spat. "You don't know when to give up." Rourke wiped blood from his lip. "We don't know how to lose." Then he moved. Faster than Tara had ever seen, Rourke ducked under Jekar's next strike and drove his knife deep into the warlord's side. Jekar roared in agony. Rourke twisted the blade and pulled it free, then followed up with a brutal strike to the alien's throat. The mighty Korlith warlord staggered. His weapon slipped from his grasp. His breath came in ragged gasps. For the first time, fear flashed in his crimson eyes. He fell to his knees. Silence fell over the battlefield. The remaining Korlith warriors watched in stunned disbelief. Their leader, the strongest among them, was defeated. Rourke took a step back, catching his breath. He raised his weapon, his voice like steel. "Lay down your arms," he commanded. "This fight is over." The Korlith hesitated. Then, one by one, they dropped their weapons. The invasion had failed. The Korlith had been beaten, and the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The battlefield was eerily quiet. Smoke curled into the sky, and the last echoes of gunfire faded into silence. The Korlith, once so certain of their victory, stood defeated. Their warlord, Jekar, lay on the ground, struggling to breathe as crimson blood pooled beneath him. His once mighty warriors had surrendered, their weapons discarded in the dirt. Rourke stood over Jekar, his combat knife still dripping with the warlord's blood. His breathing was heavy, his uniform scorched and torn, but his stance was firm. "It's over," Rourke said, his voice carrying across the field. "You invaded our world. You thought we were weak. You thought we would break. But you were wrong." Jekar coughed, his gaze filled with hatred. This isn't possible," he rasped. "You were supposed to fall. Your kind was supposed to kneel." Tara stepped forward, her heart still racing from the battle. She had seen it with her own eyes. The way the humans fought, the way they refused to surrender. Even when the odds were against them, they never gave up. "You should have studied history," Tara said softly. "Humanity doesn't kneel. We fight." Jekar's face twisted in pain and disbelief. His arrogance had been shattered, just like his fleet. He looked up at Rourke, his crimson eyes dimming. You monsters. You're no better than us." Rourke crouched beside him. "That's where you're wrong," he said. "We don't conquer. We don't invade. But if you come for us, if you try to take what's ours," his grip on his knife tightened, "we end you." Jekar's body shuddered, and then, with one final breath, he was gone. The Korlith warriors, seeing their leader fall, sank to their knees. Their empire had never faced a defeat like this. They had underestimated Earth, and now they would pay the price. A human soldier ran up to Rourke, saluting. "Commander, we've secured the remaining Korlith forces. What are your orders?" Rourke took a deep breath, looking at the defeated enemy. Round them up. They'll answer for what they've done. He turned to Tara. And you? What will you do now? Tara hesitated. For the first time, she wasn't sure. She had spent her life believing that the humans were dangerous, that they were nothing more than a primitive warlike species. But now, she had seen the truth. They weren't just warriors. They were protectors. She met Rourke's gaze. I want to learn more. I want to understand your people. Rourke smirked. Then stick around. There's a lot to learn. Above them, the sky was clearing. The battle was over, and Earth stood victorious. The Corlith Empire would remember this day forever. They had come to conquer Earth. But in the end, humanity made them vanish.